Hello, I'm Alex Orso.
Hi, my name is Tunde Idahor. Welcome to our first presentation. We're going to be talking to you about using entity framework with MVC5.
Tutorial
Hi,
number one.
welcome back. So now we're going to create a basic Contoso University web app using Entity Framework 6. So the very first thing that we have to do is we have to create a new project. And to create a new project, we have to go to the File menu, then you click on New, and then we go to Project. Next, we're going to select ASP.NET Web Application because we're creating a Contoso web app. So you click on the ASP.NET Web, call it a new name. In this case, we're going to be calling it Contoso University. And just to be sure, at this point, we're actually not going to publish to Azure immediately till the web app is ready locally on the machine. So we don't need to enter our credentials here. Next step, we're going to click OK, and that should create our new project. Next, we select our MVC 4.5 template, and then we're going to change the authentication. Based on the web app we're creating, we're going to select a no authentication, which means the user does not require an authentication to use the web app. So we select no authentication, and then you click OK. Next, you click OK. So at this point, we're going to create a web app. If you get an error message like that, you don't have to worry about creating the web app now. You can just cancel and allow the project to create. Should I stop it? Now we have a web app all compiled and ready. Just before we run it, there are a couple of changes we have to make. So on the right side, we have the solution explorer. So next we're going to create the site style. The site style is the front end of the web app. To do that, we're going to move to the views folder. Next, we'll move over to the shared folder, and then we're going to open the layout.cshl file. So just double click on it to open the file. So when the file opens up, we're going to do a little bit of change to the application. So we're going to replace each section that has the ASP.NET application with a new word, application name. Also, we're going to need to make a change as well. Right here at the bottom, that says application name, we're going to replace it with Contoso University. And then at the very bottom, we are also going to make another change. on this section. We're going to replace it with Contoso University, and then we're going to save. Next on the tutorial, we're going to we're going to make other changes to the web page by adding in new front ends for the courses, instructors, and departments. So we're going to copy that part of the code, and then we're just going to place it on the next line, just underneath the existing code part. Make sure you always save your file whenever you make a change. Next we're going to go over to the index file, where you're going to make changes to the section that actually tells you about what the front page does. So to get to the index page, you're going to go to the views folder, and then we're going to go to the home folder, and then we're going to click on index. Next, we're going to take every single sample code online from the website, and then we're just going to copy it to replace the code here, and then we're going to save our changes. So to check and to make sure if all the code changes that we have made are actually working as we want, we can run a local test on our machine with Google Chrome. To do that, you click on Google Chrome, or you can use a shortcut, which is Ctrl F5. So at this point, Microsoft Visual Studio is rebuilding the app. Depending on the speed of your computer, sometimes it might take a minute or two. So at this point, we're just going to wait for the page to come up on Google Chrome. Yes, now the page is up. Yay! So if you look at the web page right now, we have made certain changes. Now we have the front end of the web page with Contoso University in front, and then we have our tabs, the home, the about section, the contact, the students, all coming up on the web page as expected. So next we are going to move over to the next section, where we are going to add in more features and install the entity framework. Hi, so welcome back. So we have our web app running. So the next section of this tutorial, we're going to be installing Entity Framework 6. And now to install the Entity Framework, the very first thing we have to do, we have to go to the Package Manager console, which is at the bottom left. And to install the Entity Framework, we have to take in the command. So because of time, we're going to just copy and paste the command really quick, which is the install package entity framework. And then we're going to type it out in the manager console and hit enter. So basically our entity framework has been successfully installed, as you can read at the bottom. So it's installed the entity framework. So next, basically the step is one of the few steps that the tutorial has you do manually, but which could have been done automatically by ASP.NET MVC and scaffolding feature. We are doing them manually so that you can see the steps required to use the entity framework. So the very first thing we do is we're going to go over to our model folder, and then we're going to right click and we're going to create a new scaffolding, a new file. So now we're going to create a new class file. And we're going to call this class file, we're going to give it a new name as a course CS. So we have to make sure that it's saved in the format as a CS file, which is a class file. And then we're going to click on add. So once we do that, we have a bunch of default codes that are being generated by Visual Studio. Next, we're going to input a set of codes from Visual Studio that's going to create all the attributes of the entities for each table. So in this case, we're creating the course entity. And now we're going to copy the code that's going to generate the attributes for that table, and we're going to copy it into the course file class we just created. Now copy and paste, and then we're going to save our changes. So basically we're going to repeat all these steps for all the other entities as well. So I'm just gonna also do the same task here. We're gonna create a student class. We're gonna go to add class, and then we're gonna call it student. And then we're gonna add, and then we're gonna copy the code with the new attributes for the class. Then we're going to save the change. Next, we're going to also create another class for enrollment. We go to model, add class. I'm going to choose our class, and we're going to call this enrollment. So at this point, you have to know that there's a one-to-many relationship between student and enrollment entities, and there's a one-to-many relationship between course and enrollment entities. In other words, a student can be enrolled in any number of courses, and a course can have any number of students enrolled in it. Click enrollment, and then we're going to click add. So it's going to generate the default code, and then we're going to copy all the attributes for enrollment, and then we're going to replace it in the class file, and then we're going to save. Now we have finished creating all our entities for this section. Next, we're going to create the database context. The main class that coordinates the entity framework functionality for a given database model is the database context class. To create the database context class, what we have to do, we're going to create a folder in the Orso University project, and we're going to right click to generate a new folder, which we're going to call RDAL. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to switch over to Visual Studio. We're going to right click, and then we're going to also note that Contoso University is where you is located in the Solution Explorer. So we're going to right click, and then we're going to click on Add, and then we're going to create a new folder on this section here, and we're going to name that folder DAL, which is called Data Access Layer. So now we have a new folder, and then in this folder we're going to create a new class file. We're going to right click on the folder. I'm going to go to Add. We're going to create a new class file, and we're going to name that class file Student School Context. And then we're going to click Add. Next, we're going to open the school context file, and we're going to take every bunch of code here to replace the default code in the school context file, and then we're just going to do a copy and paste of that code. Next, we're going to also create another file which is called the school initializer. So we right click on the DAL file, create a class, school initializer. Just to make sure we have the proper spelling for initializer, we can copy and paste and then add. So now we have two files, school initializer and the school context file, all in the DAL folder. So next we're going to add our database into the school context file. So the default template code, we're going to replace it with a new code that has all the attributes for each entity table for the student, enrollment, and courses. Next, we're going to tell Entity Framework to use the initializer class and add an element to the Entity Framework element in the application web.config file. So to locate the web.config file, we're going to scroll down all the way down to the root folder, which is the very last folder at the bottom, and then we're going to double click to open the file. And then we're going to take the following codes here, and we're going to specify it in the entity framework. So we're going to grade this out since we don't need this section of the code. You can just add a little trick here by just putting a dash on a column, and then we can paste. Okay, we got an error message there, so we're going to recopy the same code. Yeah, so now we have it all set up. Hi, welcome back. So now we have a connection, an entity framework all set up properly, and all the school context all set up. Next, we're going to create the controllers now for each template. To create a controller, all we need to do is we're going to switch over to Visual Studio, and we're going to go to the controller folder, and we're going to right click, and we go to add, and then we're going to go to the new scaffolding item. So a new tab opens up for us to add a new scaffold. So next we're going to select the MVC5 controller with views using Entity Framework, and then we're going to click on add. So next we're going to select the controller name. In this case, it's going to be the model class. We're going to be course, school context, I'm going to select the student contoso model, school context, and then we're going to leave all this checked. We're going to leave this as unchecked, and then for the student name, it's supposed to be called student controller, so we're going to take off the S. So the correct thing is student controller, not student controller. And then we're going to click add, and that is going to generate our new controller for student. So once it is done, as you can see, you can move over to the student controller file, and then you can see the default code in there, and then you can see the variable names that have been created by the database instant object. You can see that right here. Next, we're going to go to the student controller. We're going to go over then so the student section, as you can see, has the display of the tables, which is exactly what we're looking for. And next we're going to run the page, and then we're going to click on students. We're going to click on student to see all that we've put into the database. But before we do that, we're going to rebuild our file. Once the rebuild process is complete, it lets you know at the bottom left. Then we're going to click on Google Chrome to run this application, and the new page is going to open up. And then we have our page. Next, we're going to select the student section to view. And yes, so everything is up and working. So now we can see that the controller section has just given us all the information with our last name, first name, and enrollment date as required. And you can click on the details section where you can see the last name as Alexander as expected, and the last name and first name, Carlson, and enrollment date. And then we can switch back to the home page and then click on students, And now we can see that every section of the entity database for student is up and running as expected. So in summary, you have now created a simple application that uses the entity framework and SQL Server Express local DB to store and display data. In the following tutorials, you will learn how to perform basic CRUD. Thank you for this tutorial. It was nice having you all. Alex and I are happy to have presented this. Thank you. Bye.